I may be wrong and you may be right.
Okay.
Because I was watching the State of the Union last night, which with Sam, which is, I don't know if I recommend it. I don't know if I recommend that as a couple's activity. And there is a part where President Trump looks out to Congress and he says, you need to pass the Stop Insider Trading Act in order to, stop Congress members from buying and selling stocks while they're serving. The real question is, does he actually want it? Is it a bargaining chip? Or was he doing it just to talk trash about Nancy Pelosi? Because as soon as he said you need to pass this bill, he goes, where's Nancy? Is Nancy in the crowd? Oh boy, she loves trading stocks. So there was a laundry list of legislation he was asking to be passed. And it sounds like there might be some momentum to get Congress members to stop trading. This is something that I said had absolutely zero chance of passing last week. So congratulations, you might be right. I
appreciate that. I think two things can be true at the same time. It is very much possible that he will throw his support behind this legislation just to spite Nancy Pelosi, and it still gets passed and does some good for the world.
It's entirely possible. We'll see.
How many good things have happened in society out of spite? I would argue there's probably a lot of them.
I would imagine a lot.
I am a fan of the Larry David Spite Store, so let me qualify it by that's one of my favorite Curb episodes. But I think there's probably a lot of good that's been done in the world just out of spite.
I'm trying to think if I've done anything good out of spite. It's usually a dangerous place to hang out in. Also, I'm very excited to say we have Jason Moser here.
Yeah,
Senior Analyst of the Motley Fools. Jason, good to see you, man. It's been a minute.
We're back together. I love getting the band back together. And Ricky, it's missed you, man. It's good to see you both.
Yeah, good to see you, man. We've got a ton of stuff to talk about. What a time to talk about the market. I don't have to admit that there's a research report that says Malcolm is very, very wrong about what's happening in the state of software. So we can really twist that on him from being right. There's some companies I want to check in with you about that I know you follow, Axon and PayPal. And then Malcolm, I know, is interested in how you're thinking about ETFs right now in this real choppy landscape. So let's get into it. So there are, I would say, three reasons. Let's say three reasons for the market sell-off right now. One is these new AI tools coming from Anthropic/Claude. One is this doom scenario that was written by Citrini Research, which I think is worth diving into a little bit more. And then the other reason, of course, is the resist and unsubscribe movement started by Scott Galloway. As a reminder, we are America's number 2 resist and unsubscribe related podcast. There's some Dr. Seuss math. Mr. Galloway is reporting that there has been about $250 billion in lost market cap because of that movement. Let's go in order. So first, this Anthropic and Claude announcement. They are developing new AI tools for Claude Cowork, this time human resources, investment banking, and design. In the Bloomberg reporting on this, JMO, it's discussing Novo Nordisk, where they had a single report that took months to produce. Now these staff writers with Claude can do it in about 10 minutes. So 10-week process to 10 minutes. And I don't know, it seems like the market seems to be reacting to that. What's your reaction to all of this, all of these new co-work tools coming out of Anthropic and Claude?
Yeah, I mean, the AI stuff is it's nonstop. We're talking about it every day at work, of course. And man, it got a lot of thoughts on this, Ricky. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I think that, so to me, like the big picture idea that AI is just going to take over everything and like all of these companies are going to be rendered useless. I think that's kind of a lazy take, personally. I think generally speaking, I mean, it certainly will render some businesses obsolete. I think for the most part, companies are going to find ways to utilize this technology to become even better, to become even more entrenched. And, I was talking to Matty Argersinger the other day at work. We were talking about this back and forth on Slack. So I think of a company like DocuSign, and this is just an example. I mean, not sitting and, saying go buy DocuSign or anything. But for a company like DocuSign, like exactly how does AI like replace that? How does that disrupt that? If you send me, if I'm going to a home closing or a HELOC closing or whatever it may be, and you're sending me a link to Anthropic chatbot to sign these documents, I think for most people, we're kind of looking at it and saying, whoa, wait a minute. There's a trust factor, right? There is some red tape that is involved in getting into document management and agreement in contracts and things like that. So I think that the likelier scenario is that a company like DocuSign, for example, uses AI to become better, to get stronger. I think payments, same kind of thing. I mean, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, whatever your flavor. Like, I don't think that you see AI necessarily getting there in disrupting these businesses as much as you probably see these businesses actually utilizing the technology to become stronger and more entrenched in their respective spaces.
Can I agree with you and add something to that? So
Absolutely.
You're talking about the businesses that won't be disrupted by AI. What I would rather focus on for a second is the government agencies and the administrative hurdles that would have to be moved out of the way in order for AI to be used in a lot of instances. And so you just used the idea of a home closing. So I'll stick there for a second. The regulations around buying a home are so tight. There are so many documents that must be signed a certain way with the sun in a certain place, with the paper at just the perfect right tilt. And if it's not done that perfect right way, the closing agent has to reject it and you got to come back to do the closing again. So you got all these different local government agencies, you've got federal policies, you've got the Fair Housing Administration, you've got all these different pieces to the puzzle that DocuSign has to play within. There's got to be a timestamp. There's got to be this verification. You got to answer 6 questions about your identity to prove it was you who signed the thing. If we're going to allow you to sign this thing digitally, you think about the banking sector, financial services, we're talking real estate, like all those different functions that can't be disrupted by AI because the regulations that govern all those entities can't agree on jack. So that's going to slow this process down tremendously as well.
I think you're right. I just going through experience in my work life, like in a former life, I was actually a loan officer with Bank of America. And in a former life, shortly after that, I was an insurance adjuster with Travelers Insurance.
Oh,
and
man.
Going through all of those, the job experience to me was tremendous. It hits on everything you just said there, Malcolm. The red tape, the stuff that's involved with that, it is not easy. It is very, very specific, the regulatory red tape that's involved, and to get in there and be able to even just do that, right? It reminds me, did you follow a company called Ellie Mae? Do you remember that company back in the day? Ellie Mae is a mortgage software company that Thoma Bravo ultimately acquired. But it was just basically mortgage software. And it just their deal was they had it all, laid out there in their system. All of the regulatory hurdles were cleared, and they were almost just unbeatable because they had all of those, I's dotted and T's crossed. And I think when you look at those types of spaces, you just don't discount that.
I know Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie Mae. Sally's dead, and you just replaced her with Ellie, I guess. And like that's a history lesson I didn't expect to have on this podcast, but there we go.
We'll see how this, the signing documents and AI agents plays out. If there's one thing I've learned from this news cycle, it's that people are pretty loose about who they give their power of attorney to. So it's not impossible that people in the future are saying this AI agent can sign on behalf of me. But
will it be accepted? That's the question.
Yeah.
Will these government agencies change the rules to allow it to be accepted if it's generated by a bot? I have stuff sent back to me because it was signed using Adobe Sign, and it's not a wet signature. So we'll see.
How much does Sam Altman want to give to the Ballroom Fund or the next Democratic campaign, man? We'll see how much power these AI overlords get. Let's do this. You want to do the Citrini Research story? Because this is what's really rattling markets right now, which was, it's this long Substack about a scenario in 2028 that talks about this, self-reinforcement cycle that hurts the economy, where companies are investing more into AI agents. This then reduces labor costs, which then causes them to invest in even more AI agents, leading to greater, white collar workforce reductions that then hurts the real economy. And there's other effects they get into, but I think that's the main theme of it.
So we actually had an investing team meeting at the Fool yesterday, and this was a topic of discussion. And the general takeaway, it's kind of a marketing piece.
Yeah.
But like when you look at it, at the end of the day, it's kind of a marketing piece. I mean, it's interesting, right? It captures your attention. But after kind of going through that, and then I saw something that Jamie Dimon, right, at JP Morgan was talking about. He said, look, there is a, of course, AI is going to be a disruptive force, right? Technology always is. But governments, literally won't let this happen. And Dimon was using the example of trucking drivers, right? Truck drivers. He said, all of a sudden, if you have just this situation where you're going to put 250,000, 1 million trucking drivers, however many there are, right? You put them all out of work. And then what do you do with that? Now all of a sudden you've got people that can't work, that can't sustain, their lifestyle, take care of their families, whatnot. So I just think it's worth remembering that there are ways that this technology is going to make our lives better. I don't think that we're going to see society actually just accept the fact that it's rendering us all obsolete.
I mean, I want to push back on the Jamie Dimon thing because I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Last year, JP Morgan did we're in the year of efficiency due to AI speech to investors. So he uses the example of truck drivers, which is we can't have all these truck drivers out of work making 25 grand a year stocking shelves. I thought it was interesting that he did not use the example of his own bank to say, even with all of this AI coming in, we want to hire more people at JP Morgan.
Yeah. And I think he also said that they're at the bank, they're basically sort of putting people into new positions. They're saying, hey, we don't need you to do this anymore. We need you to do that. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how employment evolves and how maybe we don't need you to do this. We now need you to do that. We just still can be working here. But we just need you to do something else.
What's up, Malcolm?
I think we got to consider JP Morgan Chase as a terrible example just because it is a gigantic amorphous blob. And one side of it doesn't always know exactly what's coming out of the other side of it. You have the CEO sitting on a stage calling what's happening in private credit a bunch of cockroaches. And when you see one, there's probably more. And then at the same time, the same bank is investing dollars or underwriting dollars going to fund a new private credit fund on the other side of the house. And so, yes, that can be his own personal view. And a lot of times Jamie Dimon says big, crazy sounding things at the time that turn out to be reasonable and logical later. And I think we have to keep in mind that he is speaking for himself and his own views and what he sees at the time as a guy who's been in the banking business for 40 years or whatever. But the business itself does another thing because it needs to survive for the next 40 years.
I think there's also the reaction to this piece is interesting to me because it is not an earnings report. It is not a outlook. It is the market responding to a hypothetical scenario that's based in some truth. Parts of this, I think parts of this piece will ultimately be true. Companies are going to look, and we've had this conversation on the show about the reaction to software as a service companies and, companies building up their own home cooking to replace them. Maybe there's a little bit of that, but maybe that's not the 100% true. And then there's parts of this piece where they're saying that AI agents are going to start using crypto on transactions. We're going down the crypto rabbit hole that now that AI agents are paying for things, that means Ethereum and Solana stable coins are going to be in much wider circulation. And so there are parts of this where I'm reading that and I'm I think there are some elements of truth here. This is a stretch, but the most surprising thing to me is I've never seen the market responding to fan fiction before where DoorDash is getting 6% of their market cap knocked off because it's name checked in this research report is something that will be hurt by AI agents looking for price discrepancies wherever they can.
I have a theory, and it's not based on a lot of fact. It's really just a feeling more than anything.
That's called podcasting, Malcolm.
But I have a feeling, I'm kind of just wondering out loud here to you guys, how much trading is being driven by AI right now, and people who have created their own models and their own trading bots, trading agents, based on a scrape and a scrub of all the data that's out there online. And the bot has been empowered, or the agent has been empowered to act on their behalf and place trades based on things like a negative report against DoorDash. Is the sentiment 51% negative versus 49% positive? And if yes, sell some of my DoorDash shares. Those kinds of decisions, because we saw in the 2010s, algorithmic trading really start to make an impact on the markets. And if there's things out there in the zeitgeist that we don't like, too many trades in one direction, boom, the trigger gets pulled and the trade happens. And then the quant on the other side of it finds out about the trade. Like, the computer is empowered to make the trade before the person knows something's happening. And I wonder if this is more of that. Like, as we talk about agentic AI and it becoming a thing, this could be a place where agents are empowered. Because I've seen blog posts that are convincing initially when I start to read, the first couple paragraphs, and then I scroll back up to see who the writer is, and it says written with AI. So I'm wondering how much of this is like the bots are running the show and we don't realize yet the impact it's having on the market.
I would imagine you are spot on there. To me, that seems absolutely reasonable and more than likely.
I'm glad to have you here, Jason, because Ricky always likes to tell me I'm crazy.
Come back anytime, man. I mean, I think the way to find out is how has daily trading volume increased since, let's say, 2023?
Yeah, I
right?
think it'd be a good number to look at. Yeah, it's obviously a very liquid market, and we're seeing just the drumbeat growing louder to keep these things open 24/7.
Yeah, I think the general theme of this piece that I disagree with is that AI agents are going to collapse all friction in the economy. That there's only, DoorDash is going to lose its advantage to 20 to 30 other home-cooked or organic delivery apps. And then these agents are going to be able to match prices with drivers, and you're going to order food with the AI agent. And while I think AI agents, for sure it's going to happen, and to be clear, I made an incorrect prediction at the beginning of the show. Take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. I think AI agents for something like travel with well-defined variables, that becomes a lot easier. Looking for flights and hotels, that sort of thing. But what do I want to eat tonight? That's something I may not want to offload to an AI agent. I want to look at the menu. Then I want to click order. I'm already being lazy at home getting delivery. Maybe I don't want to have an AI agent giving me suggestions. I want some autonomy in what I'm eating. And also I'm going to go to the app that I already know.
Yeah. I mean, there is a level of this where you would almost believe that like these AI agents are going to be like mind readers. Like that's kind of the leap you have to make almost, is like, okay, like you're telling me that I can order my pizza even faster? Like, dude, I can order like at the click of a button. How much faster does it have to be, right? Beyond like you're going to have to read my mind. And
I need a Jeep agent in my car when I get in that says pizza tonight, and I just say yes, and it makes it to my house based on how close my car is to my house.
And maybe that's where we're headed. I don't know. I mean, to me, that seems to be, I don't know. To me, it just seems more than likely that the strongest companies out there are going to be utilizing this technology to make themselves better and stronger, as opposed to like AI just taking over like our entire lives.
That's actually where I was headed. Ricky called out DoorDash is the thing that really stuck in his craw with this particular piece. To me, it's the idea that stable coins and AI are going to get rid of Visa and MasterCard. Like, there is no better installed base in the world. Forget the iPhone. There is no better installed base in the world than Visa and MasterCard. It's everywhere you want to be. So to me, the idea that is going to be able to disrupt these pieces of plastic that we all are no longer carrying around in our wallets and purses because they're on our watches and cell phones. Considering how many patents Visa already has in the blockchain space, they're like, I think the number three largest patent holder right now of all blockchain related patents. Plus, they've already partnered with Circle to issue a stable coin because they're working to get ahead of this curve. So to your point, Jason, I think this is really just going to help make the haves get a little heavier and some into have-nots. And there will be some disruption for the places that don't need to exist anymore. But for the most part, the same companies that we all know and love and interact with on a regular basis are just going to either buy the company that's doing it well and fold it into their operations, or copy the idea and get there with their size and scale and do it better.
I think you're right. I'm glad you brought up Visa and MasterCard. It kind of makes me think. You remember back in like 2022, I think Chamath was saying like short Visa and MasterCard because stable coins are going to kill them. I mean, that turned out, I'm not trying to drag him, but that was obviously just a stupid call. Even at the time, it was like, and to be very clear, I own shares of MasterCard and Visa, have owned them for a very long time, and just very happy to continue owning them. But yeah, when you look at what those companies are doing and thinking like forward, because investing is a forward-thinking exercise, right? One of the services I work on at work, we have now a quantum oriented service focused on quantum computing, and it's sort of that's going to be beyond AI, like quantum computing. You're going to hear more and more about that in the coming years. And when we're looking at companies that are investing in this space and sort of building on that technology, Visa and MasterCard are two that really stand out because they're going to be, they have to be worried about this post-quantum cryptography world where we go beyond classical computing that we have now and the cybersecurity that we have now. They've got to get beyond that into that sort of, what happens when quantum hits. And Visa and MasterCard are making big investments in that now, that security, in order to ensure that our payments network just doesn't get fully just thrown on top of its head. You look at those companies are just staying out as great examples of ones that you can try to hold on for as long as you can.
It's a mental health thing with this piece, which is is someone who is engaged with anxiety spirals before. An anxiety spiral can sound totally reasonable, and the future can sound really bad with a lot of logic, and the more you convince yourself of it. But sometimes things aren't necessarily as bad as you think they are, and it was interesting for me to see the market really react to this.
This episode is sponsored by Capital Area Planning Group. Capital Area Planning Group is a fiduciary wealth management firm that specializes in helping high net worth individuals and families navigate the complexities that come along with managing concentrated stock options, multiple income streams, and an ever-changing tax code. While our team of certified financial planners are well-versed in all things personal finance, our areas of expertise include equity compensation, estate planning, and multi-year tax planning. At Capital Area Planning Group, we believe in pricing transparency. That's why our fees are posted on our website, right alongside the various services we perform on behalf of our clients throughout the year. If you're tired of receiving the same cookie-cutter advice from your financial advisor, then don't wait. Reach out to us today at capgllc.com to experience a better approach to wealth management. Again, that web address is www.capgllc.com.
All right, one company I want to talk to JMO about is PayPal.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Blue Owl. Okay.
About what?
I thought you were going to say Blue Owl. Okay.
Blue Owl?
PayPal.
Blue Owl is your thing, Malcolm. PayPal. I've talked about PayPal quite a bit with JMO, and a lot has happened since then. Alex Chris is out. We thought that was our guy. He was making all the right moves when it came to capital allocation. The market didn't care. And I guess I want to just broadly, why have investors soured on this company so much when he was following the exact plan? We're making it more efficient. We're going to think about capital allocation. And the market said, yeah, that doesn't sound so good anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I've owned shares of PayPal forever as well. And we talked about it a lot, Ricky. Alex Chris seemed like he was doing a good job. And I mean, I think that's a good example of sort of, he was not doing a bad job, but I think the market kind of dictated what was going to happen to him, right? And I can't necessarily speak to why the market is so down on PayPal. I think generally speaking, I mean, yes, it is valued at just an extremely cheap multiple today. I think somewhere around 12 times forward earnings estimates for a company that it does a very good job minting a lot of cash. It generates a lot of cash, and I think that they've done a very good job over the course of the last several years in buying back shares. I think the share count's down something better than 21% over the last 5 years. I mean, that's material. You know, shareholders feel that in the good way. It just, payments is obviously a very competitive space. And I think that ultimately when you look at the payment space, it is kind of a race to the bottom, right? I mean, one of those key metrics you look at with these companies is the take rate, right? How much money are they actually able to take off of the transaction? And that number just kind of continues to go down. Why? Because we as consumers don't want to have to pay more than we should, right? When we're transacting. By the same token, the network's pretty big too. I mean, 430 some odd million users, I think. I have 2 girls in college, and Venmo is just like a language for us. We use it every day. And PayPal, I have linked to so many of my subscriptions that, you know, it all just kind of runs through my PayPal account, which is connected to one credit card. And, you know, that way, when that credit card expiration date comes, I just have to renew that one card as opposed to having to go and renew all these different subscriptions. So it's something we use all the time, but it just, whatever the market is looking for, it seems to not be enough. And we have this thing at work we do every day on the website called Today's Take. And it's where 6 analysts go in there and they chime in on just the question of the day. And one question earlier in January was just like this: what's a reckless prediction for 2026? My reckless prediction was that JP Morgan is going to acquire PayPal, because why not, right? Why wouldn't you want to have that network and buy? I think you buying PayPal just a steal, I think, today. Now it seems like Stripe maybe is interested in buying some or all of it. I guess we'll see how that all shakes out. But yeah, a lot of balls in the air right now for this company.
Yeah, this is the trouble with playing valuation games, is if you look at PayPal, the earnings per share and price have gone in completely opposite directions. They have not moved together at all. Earnings per share and shares outstanding going dramatically down. They were trying to play a capital allocation game, and the market said absolutely not. Yeah, let's dive into this Stripe news. Bloomberg, I believe, reported that Stripe is now interested in acquiring PayPal. This wasn't possible a few years ago, but now PayPal, it's about a $50 billion market cap. Stripe, $160 billion market cap. It's not impossible for this private company to take PayPal.
I didn't realize Stripe was this big. So I saw the headline. Stripe is saying it might acquire the entire thing rather than just taking it on for parts, and we'll divvy it up and divide the world. Personally, I was actually hoping SoFi would come into the mix, but I also know that basically their market value is almost on par with each other, or SoFi is smaller. But
love
I
Anthony
didn't realize
Noto, man. I like Noto. He's a good guy.
Same. I've been right. So I guess since we're being good journalists here, I've been a SoFi shareholder for quite a while, and I'm very bullish on the company. It's actually my largest personal holding. But nice. Just based on the customer base and what the Venmo product represents specifically, it seems like to me, based on the loyalty of SoFi customers, Venmo would fit perfectly with that group. And that's more what I was basing it on. Not anything from a mechanics standpoint, how much overlap there already is, because SoFi does already have a bank charter, and so they don't necessarily need PayPal for that, those kind of things, which is another reason companies would be interested in acquiring PayPal. I think maybe a bigger tech company comes in here and buys PayPal, because a lot of these companies have been offering banking as a service through some other intermediary, but you could go buy the whole thing, slap your name on it now, and distribution shows up immediately. Think about Apple, for example, moving PayPal into its mix. And instead of having to partner with a JP Morgan Chase or formerly Goldman Sachs for your credit card and your Apple Pay and everything else, you already have the bank charter and you're right there on the handset.
Two things. One, Malcolm, you can't go from earlier in the show saying, I'm going to give you an opinion that I have nothing to base off of, and then going through a long theory and then saying, I guess I'm being a good journalist now. You really gotta pick your lane between.
Jason inspired me to make sure that I give proper disclosure of my own vested interest in my opinion that I'm sharing here on the show.
Cool. We'll do a fact check after the show.
I figured the listeners assume I'm always looking to make money, but I want to be a great journalist like Jason someday, and so I'm going to make sure that I give the proper disclosure.
I feel like I didn't know this. SoFi is your largest personal holding.
But because of growth, not because I've thrown so many dollars at it recently that it just shows up that way. I've been buying SoFi since it was at $4.50 or $4.60 a share. Nice. And every time Anthony Noto bought because it dipped below the $7 mark, I was like, me too. And so just from nature of accumulating shares every time I watched him buy, and then I think it 5x'd since then at one point. Maybe it's 4x now because it's come in some to like $19 a share. So it's the largest thing, and I keep looking at it and going, should I do something here? And forcing myself to have good discipline as an investor and let my winners continue to run.
Well, I like how SoFi started out too, right? I mean, it was predominantly just, it was like a student loan company, first and foremost, like that. And the whole idea was they're trying to make it less onerous, right? Trying to take some of the burden off you, give you the best rates you can possibly get. But they did such a good job of just building off of that. And
they were forced to pivot when interest rates spiked in 2022. The student and also student loans had been paused because of COVID in 2020. Yeah. So forbearance for 2 straight years meant that their business went almost to zero overnight. And that was where the shares sold off so aggressively. And I was like, I like this guy, Anthony Noto, to your point. Yeah. I am convinced that they will figure it out. And each time they layered on, here's how we're going to add more partners. Here's how we're going to add more customers. Here's how we're going to add more members. We're going to do this now. We're going to do this. It started to make perfect sense that they're building an ecosystem so that the people who are most loyal and love them the most never have to think about talking to a JP Morgan Chase or a Bank of America or Wells Fargo or whoever. And I started to notice that like this place is an identity for people. It's not so much like just your bank. Being a SoFi member is an identity for people. And that was what made me decide that there's something here. I should actually start to accumulate some shares.
Yeah, banking's sticky too. You got to love that. Like
that's the loss of the third place. Oh, sorry, Jim.
Yeah. No, you're good.
I'm going to say that's if you're making your banking institution a part of your identity, please, join a rec center, join a bowling league, maybe find an organized religion if that suits your preferences. But I want to bring it back to PayPal real quick. This is something that I thought was interesting. I want to see if it's interesting to Jason, which is it was this X account, Earnings Matter. And this account looked at Enrique Loris, who's the new CEO of PayPal, and looked at where his bonus starts. And basically saying that this stock needs to hit $83 in order for him to start getting a bonus payout as CEO. Right now, PayPal's around $47. So 47 to 83 in order for this CEO to get a bonus. Do you think that's meaningful if you're trying to play these arbitrage games?
If you're a CEO coming in and you know that your incentive is clearly set out that way, I mean, you're going to do everything you can to do that. Now, I think he's incoming, right? And I think it starts maybe in March. It will be interesting to see if that even materializes, because this may be a company that just gets taken out before he even steps in, because you think about everything going on with PayPal right now. I mean, the leadership transition, they got this bank charter up there they're trying to figure out. Now you've got all this stuff in regard to an acquisition going on. I mean, this is just a business that is in, I don't want to call it chaos. Maybe it's organized chaos, but I don't know if it even gets to that point where he even needs to worry about that bonus. I mean, it may be that we don't even see him really take over. I don't know.
He might not have enough power in order to act on that. I think that's a fair take.
Well, yeah, I mean, what do you do? Like, I mean, it's not like Alex Chriss, again, I go back to Alex Chriss, he wasn't doing a bad job, right? The the business itself is doing quite well. I mean, obviously the market doesn't want to have anything to do with it, but I mean, that's kind of where, we can agree to disagree, but it's not like the company it's fundamentally still a very good business, obviously. But growth, I think, is the big question mark. And maybe just Alex Chriss wasn't bringing enough to the table there.
Let's hit Axon. Speaking of companies that are growing, this was when I wrote this outline yesterday. I said cut 40+% from all-time highs. Then it reported yesterday after the bell. It is up. It shot up 20% on that. Company's still growing at 40% revenue. For those who don't know, Axon does police body cameras. They made tasers, was how they got their start. It's basically the nicer version of Palantir, where they're like, hey, we're here to save lives. But we also do surveillance. Anything you want to say on Axon?
I mean, Axon's just a company we followed for a while at work. And I mean, I've owned shares for a long time as well. And I mean, I've had the good fortune to be able to speak with leadership there a number of times, interview them for, our shows at work. And I've always kind of considered Axon, I sort of look at it as the Apple of public safety. Like, they do such a good job of getting the hardware out there and then just like keeping that relationship going. And I think if we look at the numbers here, so this quarter that they just reported, this marks the 8th consecutive quarter of revenue growth better than 30%. It marks the 16th consecutive quarter of revenue growth better than 25%. And a lot of that just has to do with their ability to just go beyond what their core service was. I mean, this back in the day, this used to be called Taser, right? The company was actually called Taser. And I mean, that's what they're known for is the Taser weapons. But they're on like their 10th iteration of the Taser now. But with body cameras, in all of the other things that they're doing, right? Drones as a first responder. They made these acquisitions recently to build out their Axon 911 service and trying to sort of, consolidate and streamline that 911 service and utilize AI, of course, to make it better. The one thing I think that probably goes under the radar when it comes to Axon, and it's not the sexiest part of the business, but you got to just keep this in mind. They have a part of the business called evidence.com. And evidence.com is where they house all of their video and audio evidence, right? All of the stuff that the body cameras, pull in, they've got to maintain that evidence so that it can serve, its purpose in court of law and whatnot. And that evidence.com holds more than 30 times the video content that Netflix has in its entire library. And that to me is just kind of one of those things where the scale of that is obviously, when you start thinking about it, 30 times Netflix. Like, I mean, we all, I think, use Netflix. You get how big that could be. Switching from that is just monumentally difficult. And I don't think it's something that is ever going to really happen. I think of David Gardner at work. And Rick, you remember David's, he's got the snap test and the cola test, right? Snap test, if you snap your finger and that company disappears tomorrow, is it going to matter? Will the world feel it? Well, absolutely. If Axon disappears tomorrow, the world will feel it. And the cola test is like, is there a Pepsi to their Coke, right? Is there a company out there that is doing what they're doing or like competing? And with Axon, there really is no clear Pepsi to their Coke, so to speak. So, passing those two tests alone, I think, is just gives you at least some idea as to the quality of this investment. It is a polarizing company, of course, I think, and we've seen everything that's gone on with immigration and the headlines, and people are getting frustrated with that. But I think transparency and public safety is only going to become more important, and that's exactly what Axon is trying to do. And I'll be hanging on to this one for a while, I think.
You talk about pivots, though. We were talking about SoFi having to make a big pivot when their business model looked like it was going in the toilet. Taser used to be a hardware company. Like, they used to literally sell, to your point, the actual tasers and the cartridges that you need in order to shoot tasers at a suspect. Then they figured out somewhere along the way, the hardware isn't really where the money is. This is kind of like Toast, right? We'll put the hardware in your hands and then make you pay the subscription to use the tool. It's really the monthly service fees related to like their simulators. So I have to actually practice deploying the taser safely and properly, and I have to put all of my officers through a certain number of hours of training every single month, and they've got to get certified now. And then we've got, to your point, drone operation, and now we can do drone operation virtually, and so they've got to spend a certain number of hours monthly. Oh, that monthly subscription now includes drone operation services, and so you just keep layering on all the different things that people in law enforcement need to actually practice to make sure their skills are sharp in a non-lethal situation. Because Axon's whole mantra is we want to be the non-lethal choice when it comes to law enforcement. And so you just keep adding all these different features while also society and social climate is saying you need to spend way more hours practicing your jump shot before you go out there on the floor. And for better or for worse, that means that the police systems, the police departments, and all these different local government agencies all have to increase their budgets for training. And all of that funnels into Axon because, to your point, there is no Pepsi to its Coke. And so for monthly subscription fees, that's how they've grown and blown out of control when it comes to their earnings versus their origin story, which was we're just going to sell more hardware. Okay, now we can sell more body cameras. Okay, now we can charge you to hold the footage in our repositories because your government officials say you have to hold on to that data. You can't destroy the evidence at the end of a shift, and on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anecdotally, I'll end with this, but like I play golf and I play golf all my life. And a few years back, I went up, played in a tournament here up in Northern Virginia. A couple of guys I played with are with the Washington, D.C. law enforcement. And just great day. And, I always try to just enjoy the day and leave stock talk at home. But man, when I was playing with two cops, I was like, guys, I need to ask you a question. Just out of curiosity, like Axon, you got any strong feelings there? And they were like, we can't do our jobs without it. It's great. We don't even know what else is out there that competes with it. We are all in, and the relationship's only growing. And so it just, that was just anecdotal. There was two law enforcement officers, but to hear that, I just thought, that sort of reinforces my belief in what the company's doing.
You tell those cops to go build an AI agent. This goes back to Citrini Research. They're going to build an AI agent that's going to develop their own software that houses evidence and collection and does training for them. So that's what we're going to. Malcolm, did you have anything actually serious to say?
Well, first of all, can cops be replaced by AI? That's the question we should all be asking ourselves before we invest in anything, apparently, these days. You're right. There could be a RoboCop storming down the block here in D.C. at any moment. I mean that both literally and in jest. No, but I was just going to point to what Jason just took us through, which if you're listening, you may have just kind of blown past. But I think it's important sometimes as an investor, when you're considering whether or not to invest in a thing, especially things that are lesser known to you because they're not as obvious as Apple or, Toyota or something, like sometimes just asking people who are in a position to have an inside knowledge of how the thing works and how important it is to do their job, and maybe even what the budget is related to that expense and how inelastic the company feels that the budget is. Sometimes that's enough to help you recognize whether there is an investment opportunity here or not. And you don't really have to go so deep and get analysis paralysis to not allow yourself to be able to pull the trigger. Like one that I think about, to your point, Jason, ironically, I had a conversation with one of my clients at a golf tournament. I wasn't playing myself. I'm not that good, but we were at a golf tournament, and this particular client is the CTO of a publicly traded company. And so I asked him, I'm interested in investing in this company, Netscope. Have you heard of it? And he lit up and was like, oh my God, yeah, we love them. And I was like, tell me more. Then I called two other people in similar positions in their Fortune 500 roles and said, I'm interested in investing in this company, Netscope. Have you heard of them? And in both cases, immediately, Yeah, I don't even know what we would use otherwise. Like that.
Yeah.
That is the company that we use to monitor devices leaving the premises. Like that's our go-to. And so that was enough for me to say the people who use it know. And if you know, you know, and otherwise just this isn't for you. And so I think sometimes we can just get too much in the weeds doing research online and letting people talk us out of a good investment. You really just need to talk to the people who are boots on the ground using the thing.
I love that.
Malcolm is blowing past robot cops, which he knows gets me into conspiracy theory territory. But I also know we're about 45 minutes into this show and I got to start landing the plane. And that's going to take another 15 to really get into, and then probably lose half of our subscribers about the possibilities there. Anyway, JMO, you want to talk about stocks you're buying?
Sure. Yeah.
What you got, man? What you been looking at?
Well, so I mean, obviously we have trading guidelines at work, so we need to make sure that it's clear that we can buy a stock. We have internal trading guidelines, so we're going to make recommendations. Yeah, we so this is all on the level. These are stocks that I bought over the last 3 weeks. But I added to my United Health Group position, and I know that's a bit of a controversial, I guess, maybe.
Mark Cuban coming on the show right now. Mark Cuban, please join the line.
I feel like with United Health Group, it kind of like, going back to what Malcolm was talking about with JP Morgan, like these big banks, right? They're black boxes for the most part. You don't really fully know what's going on. And I readily admit there's plenty of stuff I don't know in regard to United Health Group. But I do know that United Health Group is essentially our healthcare system, and it can't go away. It just can't. Whether you like that or not, it just can't. And I think it's a business going through a lot of challenges right now. But we were talking about this, and go back to Matty Argersinger, because he and I talk shop all the time at work. But back when Berkshire Hathaway was buying into that position, when the company was really taking a hit, we were like, man, listen, I'm getting a little older, Ricky, and I am starting to think a little bit more about protecting my wealth as opposed to growing my wealth. And part of that means that I am really focused on just building out strong dividend payers. And I just want to be able to live off my dividends when the time comes. And United Health Group is a company I think that will, it'll make it through this difficult time. I think it's always going to be a key part of our healthcare system and whatever changes may come. But I added to that. And then the other two companies, and I will add, there's a third that I want to buy, but I am building out my own little cybersecurity basket. And I've owned Cloudflare forever, so I didn't buy that, but I did open a position in Palo Alto Networks, and then also Zscaler.
Hey,
and I want to round that basket out with CrowdStrike, but CrowdStrike is a company that I still have to let some time pass before I can actually buy it. But yeah, cybersecurity to me is kind of like one of those things where, I mean, AI, like, Claude isn't going to disrupt. These companies are going to use AI to get stronger and better, right? And so I think cybersecurity is something that's still going to be around in 10 years. And I think if, it's probably only going to become more important as time goes on. So I just was building out that little cybersecurity basket. So United Health Group, Zscaler, Palo Alto, and looking to buy CrowdStrike when the window opens.
Malcolm got me on Zscaler. I thought he had a really good point, which is, okay, so let's say more AI agents are coming and Zscaler does zero trust security, which if you've dealt with it, it can be annoying. Hey, is that really you using this computer? And if there's more AI agents trying to do bad things, then there's a greater need there for a zero trust security platform. And I don't know, I buy that thesis for a little stab.
Sure thing. Hey, one question I had. Either one of you guys ever heard of a company called Rubrik?
No.
Cybersecurity. That's another one that's kind of on my radar. I haven't bought shares of it yet, but it's one that I'm digging into and I'm kind of interested in.
Here's my problem. I shouldn't say problem. Here's the thing that has stopped me before on Rubrik. Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, and Zscaler have more than 15 modules, I think, each that they offer to their customer bases, and that number is growing significantly. Like CrowdStrike brags about like 27 or so, I think, at this point.
I think that's right, yeah.
I don't know that there's anything Rubrik does that none of the three of them offer their customers. And so the problem is the name recognition. You're behind the category leaders who are the first phone call for every CTO or CISO across the Fortune 500. And so to me, Rubrik looks like a name that ends up getting folded into someone else that needs to offer cybersecurity as one more feature. Think about Google, Microsoft, a company like that, versus it being a standalone company that does cybersecurity work on behalf of all of its customer base.
That's been my biggest question, and just the differentiator. What I know that you're kind of the business is based on like helping companies operate after the fact, right? After you've been hacked, we're going to help you keep your business running. I mean, it can't. Those other
that
companies do the
seems
same
to
thing.
me like something Claude Code Security could spin up in 2 seconds. Like that doesn't seem disruptable enough to me.
Yeah.
Against AI. But it's interesting to me that you think cybersecurity is the place that is less likely to be disrupted by what Claude can do, because that to me is where the bargains are right now in this market. Like if I'm going into the grocery store with my shopping basket, I'm going down the cybersecurity aisle and I'm buying as much as I can because everything is on crazy sale. And I think the resale market for the stuff I'm buying today is going to be dramatically increasing over time. And then I'll be able to turn around and unload those things on eBay to the people that really like what I bought on sale to continue that little narrative.
I like the way you think, Malcolm. I like the way you think.
It just it doesn't make sense to me that the category leader in cybersecurity, which right now is CrowdStrike, is off by so much. Its multiple is still significantly higher than some of its peers. And so to your point, I haven't added to CrowdStrike while I've been adding to other names. But it's just creating this market to me that just looks stupid, for lack of a nicer way to say it. Like, we will need more security from the bots. Full stop.
Yep.
What's the disconnect here?
I don't know, but that's what I'm buying.
Sorry, Ricky. I know you wanted to go somewhere. I felt a rant bubbling in my soul, and I had to get that off my chest.
You're fine. I was going to say, I know you want to talk about ETFs. As we start,
I do. I want to talk about ETFs, and Jason's the perfect guy to have this conversation with, I think. But I was thinking about this because I was writing about this, and usually when I start writing, it's my way to get a thought out of my head and really understand how I feel about something. And then I was watching CNBC, and one of the anchors, Dominic Chu, is talking about, he's running ETF Edge, and talking about how thematic ETFs have taken off in recent years among retail investors, but institutional investors still love index. They just love the clarity, the simplicity, the cheap exposure that index ETFs give. So all of these ETFs that have launched, now we have more ETFs than we do individual stocks, which is crazy. But all of them are thematic ETFs that promise to do these wonderful things, and people are jumping in and out of them, trading through them like daily options, basically, accomplishing nothing, I would assume. I don't know the answer to this. I have no anecdote, I have no actual material evidence of this, but it just feels to me as I talk to people that like nothing is being accomplished with many of these thematic ETFs because they're not owning them long enough for it to do anything. Typically, you've got to own these things through a full market cycle to see where its value comes in. If you're a hedge fund investor, you've got to be invested in that hedge fund for like 8 to 10 years to go through a bad and a sideways market cycle to see where the real value of being in one of the hedgies is. If you're in a triple levered ETF on NVIDIA, you only want to be in it for 48 hours when they report their earnings and you're out of that thing. You don't want to be hanging out in there for the long term. And that's more of what these thematic ETFs popping up are. They're like ways to add additional juice and play the markets even harder versus actually being an investor, which I think is going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, well, there's a lot there. I mean, it reminds me a lot of what we do at my work, often every day. I mean, we certainly are opening and running services that are more thematic. And I could go back to 2019, for example. we opened up a service at work called Augmented Reality and Beyond. And essentially the service was based on this idea of immersive technology and where we were going with it. And at the time, a lot of it was centered around like this, Apple is going to be doing something big in this space. And, it turned out to not really materialize. Honestly, they came out with the Vision Pro, and I don't know. You ever test drive that Vision Pro? I went to the Apple store one day and I test drove it, and it was cool, great technology. I mean, ain't no way I'm paying $3,500 for one of those things. And I just personally, for me, I was like, it's amazing technology. I just don't see the use case. Now, for immersive technology, you see certain companies that are benefiting from that. Going back to Axon, for example, they use augmented and virtual reality for training purposes. And so you see sort of niche use cases that it works for. But I would say that's a trend that probably didn't develop like we thought it would. Had another service that we opened up based on 5G technology, and just talking about companies that will benefit from the advent of 5G. And the neat part about that is what comes after 5G? 6G, right? So we can do that. We can do 7G too. Like it can go on and on and on. So really we're just talking about a tech service. But I think the difficult part is, number one, you got to predict the trend. You got to have some actual understanding as to whether this trend will materialize. But then, like you said, Malcolm, you're going to have to be in it for a while to see if it materializes. And so that's where that can be very tricky. So, I mean, I'm someone where I mostly own just individual stocks. Now, I do have shares in one ETF. I think it's the total stock market index, the VITSX, I think is what it is. But most of what I invest in is just individual stocks based on market trends that I believe in for the long haul, right? Payments, Visa and MasterCard, housing, Home Depot, right? Cybersecurity, we were just talking about, some healthcare and whatnot. But I think it's difficult to really be able to identify those trends and then to have the conviction to stick in it for the next 8 to 10 years.
Let's leave it there. Jason, I can't thank you enough for the time. It was so good to see you. So good to podcast with you again. Anything you want to plug?
Just really, really grateful to join you guys. Thank you for having me. This is really a lot of fun.
All right. Well, if JMO has no plugs, you can find Malcolm at Malcolm on Money on social media. I'm at Rick So Slick on X. You can find me, Ricky Mulvey, on LinkedIn. Also, I'm writing Substacks now. I've been doing that for a little bit. The conversation I had with Malcolm, where I went through Jeffrey Epstein's trading account, I did that in more detail. rickymulvey.substack.com. He was very bad at investing, and I explained why. So we'll see you next week, and appreciate you being here.
Information shared in this recording and by its guests represent the views and opinions of the guests and does not represent the views or opinions of the host. This content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. This content is not, nor is it intended to be, a substitute for professional financial advice. It is always recommended that you seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your personal financial situation.